evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, the show, it's the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Well, there's probably no more significant and politically sensitive position a new president fills than Attorney General, and Donald Trump picked his today. Jeff Sessions of Alabama, one of the first in the Senate to endorse Trump and a well-known economic populist. Response from the left over today's Trump appointments was immediate and ferocious.
His Attorney General is Jeff Sessions, an anti-immigration senator whose alleged racist statements cost him a federal judgeship. His national security advisor is General Michael Flynn, an outspoken anti-Islamist with close ties to Vladimir Putin, and his CIA director is Tea Party Congressman Mike Pompeo.
You've got the Bannon controversy. Now you've got Sessions. Flynn hasn't exactly gotten the most enthusiastic response either.
It's really getting more and more disturbing and clear that Donald Trump is not trying to bring the country together with the moves he's making right out of the gate.
Doesn't Mitt Romney look good to us now? Oh, my God.
I'm an optimist, too. This does not make me optimistic. This pisses me off.
Well, Whoopi's mad. Many on the left are arguing that Jeff Sessions is morally unfit to serve as Attorney General. Among them, our next guest, columnist Jonathan Allen of Roll Call. Jonathan, thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
So you wrote a column about Sessions before today's announcement, but recently. And I got to say, it's one of the most unfair things I think I've ever read.
Okay.
I mean,
well,
it's almost like a pure
award.
download from the DNC website. You say, among many other things, Sessions is a favorite of Stormfront, the white nationalist web community founded by former Klansman Don Black. Is there any evidence that he's had contact with Stormfront, endorsed Stormfront, or are you just smearing him on the basis of their endorsement of him?
Well, look, I'm not saying that he's like a member of Stormfront or anything.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that he is a favorite of people who hold bigoted views, and that's not. That,
so if someone you don't like says something nice about you, you're tainted by that?
Well, I think if you look at the history and the pattern of Jeff Sessions, he said things over the course of time that should make
you said something really specific. You said he was endorsed by Stormfront. But I'm sure he would disavow that immediately. So why is that fair to write that?
He hasn't disavowed it that I know of.
Oh, so you think he agrees with Stormfront? Is that what you're evidence for that?
I don't know, but the point that I would make about Jeff Sessions and the larger point of the column is Americans should have a right to feel that they are going to be equally protected under the law. And Jeff Sessions, over the course of time, and I pointed out a lot of other things in that column, has said and done things that should make people some people feel uncomfortable with the idea that he's going to treat them fairly under the law.
I don't think, here's what people have a right to, is the expectation that if someone's going to throw out a charge, that it's substantiated. It's not just by implication. In this McCarthy way, you say, among other things that I'm quoting now, surely Sessions wouldn't try to resegregate the American armed forces in which he served. Really? Jonathan Allen, surely you wouldn't batter a child. What does that mean? Nobody suggested
you're right, I wouldn't.
But nobody suggested he would resegregate the armed forces.
Well, Jeff Sessions has been opposed to the Voting Rights Act in the past.
Is that the same as resegregating the American armed forces?
Well,
I mean, that's a really appalling thing to say about somebody.
Wait a second. It's not that far of a cry for some people.
But has that suggestion ever come up? That's specific. We're talking
about the Attorney General of the United States.
No, we're talking about your column.
We're talking about the Attorney General.
You suggested that was even a possibility. He would resegregate the U.S. armed forces, and I'm asking where.
I said he wouldn't.
Okay. Well, you wouldn't beat your wife.
But however,
you're attacking him.
However,
but not directly.
However, there are the armed forces of the United States is one of the institutions that is most racially diverse, most ethnically diverse in our country, right?
Right.
Lots of people of all sorts of backgrounds in the United States Armed Services. First integrated by Harry Truman, way back when. All of those people who are not white people would have to have faith, and the reason that came up is we're talking about a potential defense secretary appointment for him at some point. Should be able to have faith that their leader doesn't discriminate against them or is not prejudiced against them.
Because there's literally no possibility that he wants to do that he would suggest doing it, or that he would do it. But you're fear-mongering. But by the way, you know what else is a very diverse place? Is the state of Alabama, which he's represented for 20 years. It's 25% African-American. Can you name, in the 20 years he has served, 19 as senator, a single instance where he has mistreated someone on the basis of his race? Ever. One.
Well, senators don't typically walk around mistreating their citizens.
You're calling the guy a racist, so why don't you throw some examples out?
Here, I'll give you an example of something that I think should worry people if they believe in the equal protection of the law.
Right.
When he talks about immigration, right? He's a big anti-immigration guy, wants to crack down on immigration. When President Obama said he was going to put 2,000 minors undocumented minors in
What is it?
Alabama.
You mean here illegally?
Children. Yes, here illegally, children.
Okay.
In the state of Alabama, Jeff Sessions' response was, we're going to have to treat them and feed them and let them go.
Okay.
So
I'm missing your point. Was the state not on the hook for feeding and clothing those
kids?
kids?
He was complaining about the idea that the state of Alabama was going to have to feed and clothe children.
Okay, but
do you think
so that makes him
that's
racist?
such an awful?
I mean, that's your example of his racism? Are you being serious?
First of all, I don't think I called him racist.
You called him racist like 9 times in the column. I mean, it's
no, but if we're going to use the word,
and I'm asking you, what's the example of his racism, and you don't have one.
Wait,
so
now wait a second. Well, if you want to go back, no, what you asked me was what's recent.
Yeah,
so in
1986, he's been a U.S.
So in
senator.
1986,
he's been overwhelmingly re-elected for 20 years, and I'm asking of one instance where he's been racist. You don't have one.
Are you saying
you downloaded some talking points from the DNC?
Well, first of all,
I
wrote that column before Sessions was nominated.
I mean, this is just a totally hack job here.
You asked me for instances of him doing racist things.
Yeah.
Oh, well, now wait a second. You asked me for recent examples, and your argument is that you could serve in the Senate for 20 years, and just because you served in the Senate for 20 years, you were elected to the Senate, you're not racist.
My argument
that is at odds with American history.
My argument is that before you call someone racist and suggest that he has ties to, you do repeatedly, and suggest that he has ties to Stormfront and might resegregate the armed forces, that you might have some facts.
I have some facts.
You don't.
In 1986, he called the NAACP un-American.
Really? Because
I'm sorry, that was during his hearing. He had done it previously.
I think the NAACP is a totally discredited group. Does that make me a racist? I mean, let's get back to reality a little bit. You also say this. You're not alone in saying this. He is, quote, beyond the ideological fringe.
It's true.
Really? Because I actually looked up some of his views, which I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
What percentage of Americans do you think believe we need to reduce the amount of immigration into this country?
I think a lot of Americans.
Oh, a majority. Did you know that?
I think a lot of Americans believe that.
So
you realize that immigration from Mexico right now is actually going the other way?
I realize that has nothing to do with the question I asked you. You said he is on the ideological fringe, and my point is the fringe is far outside the mainstream. And by definition, that view is at the very center of the country. It's the opposite of the fringe.
That's one view that he holds that's in the mainstream.
So why don't you, since we're on TV Live, give me an example of an opinion he has that is on the ideological fringe.
He wants to ban same-sex marriage. That's on the ideological fringe.
Is that true?
Well, from your argument about a majority of Americans supporting reduced immigration,
I thought that you
a majority of Americans also support same-sex marriage.
The majority of U.S. states held referenda on that exact subject, and it passed. So, like, what world are you in?
A majority of the American people, go look at polling, a majority of the American people, and by the way, the Supreme Court of the United States, right, he's going to uphold the laws.
But at the moment when it was, look, I'm not arguing against gay marriage, just to be totally clear. I'm just saying to be out or beyond, as you put it, the ideological fringe, you have to have a view that is held by a tiny minority, and you have not named one.
He believes.
So this is a slur against him.
Wait a second. He believes that the Confederate flag, as he said a couple of years ago, represents a great achievement of the United States.
Okay, well, I don't even know what that means, but that's the basis upon which you're saying he's, quote, beyond the ideological.
I think that's beyond the ideological.
You're carrying water for the Democratic Party, and
I'm
you're
not
smearing this guy without engaging his ideas.
That's I wrote about this before this even became an issue.
Well, they were going
carrying
after
water,
him.
Talking points. I mean, that's
These
ridiculous.
are pure talking points because you don't back it up. I would go write a column where you say, he says this is the policy that he proposes, and here's why it's wrong. And instead it's, he's endorsed by Stormfront.
He said the KKK was okay until he found out that they smoked pot.
You know, I can't.
He actually said that.
Really think,
he acknowledged that in a hearing, in a congressional hearing.
That Jeff Sessions is pro-KKK. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying
then what are you saying?
What I'm saying is he said that he thought they were okay.
So what he said was, I told a joke about marijuana that was a bad joke. He never said I'm for the KKK.
Well, I mean, if that's your standard.
That's his standard. I'm asking you a really simple question. Do you think he's for the KKK or not?
I don't know.
Well, you don't know.
I don't know.
Then why are you suggesting he is?
All I said is what he said.
Look, I'm just saying, engage the guy on the facts. Jonathan Allen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tucker.
I appreciate it. All right. As we await more cabinet appointments from the presidential transition team, Trump is headed to one of his many properties for the next few days. The president-elect and his advisors will be working from the Trump National Golf Club, that's in New Jersey. A parade of supplicants will also be on hand, including former Governor Mitt Romney, who's expected to be there tomorrow. And that's where we find Fox News correspondent Brian Yennis. Brian, what's going on down there?
Hey, good evening, Tucker. Well, President-elect Donald Trump will be meeting former Governor Mitt Romney here in Bedminster, New Jersey, at his golf course at 1 p.m. tomorrow to reportedly discuss a possible role for Mr. Romney as his Secretary of State. And to be a fly on the wall in that meeting. Romney has been an ardent anti-Trump guy from the beginning of this campaign. In March, just skewering Trump, calling him a phony, a fraud, a threat to democracy, a con man. Trump, in return, has called Romney a loser, a choker, a failed candidate who isn't his friend. And now the two will meet. Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, has left it open, saying a meeting with Mr. Trump doesn't guarantee that it's going to be an interview for a cabinet position, noting that Mr. Romney is a successful businessman and a former governor of Massachusetts. But still, Trump choosing Romney as a possible Secretary of State could be seen as a sign that Trump is willing to be a pragmatic president. Romney is an establishment Republican that could calm nerves on both sides of the aisle, who may be afraid that Trump's foreign policy could be a bit unhinged or aggressive, but there are disagreements. Romney has said Russia is our greatest geopolitical threat, and really Trump has left it open, saying that he's willing to work with Russia, for instance, to fight ISIS in Syria alongside Assad. Now, Mr. Trump arrived at Bedminster at 5:15 today, and he'll be here all weekend continuing to work on his transition team. Governor Romney is one of at least 8 meetings tomorrow. The list includes meetings with retired U.S. Marine Corps General James Mattis as a possible Secretary of Defense, as well as 2 possible Secretary of Education candidates, the controversial Michelle Reed, who is the former Chancellor of Washington, D.C. Public Schools, and mega donor from Michigan, Betsy DeVos. She has led the Michigan's Republican Party, and both of those candidates are both pro-choice when it comes to schools and charter schools. So big weekend here. He'll be working all weekend right here from his golf course. Tucker?
Brian, great to see you. Thanks a lot. Have fun in Bedminster. Cool town. All right, here with us now to talk about today's appointments, 2 of our all-time favorites, Molly Hemingway. She is senior editor at The Federalist, and Susan Friccio. She is chief congressional correspondent at The Washington Examiner. It's great to see you both. Molly, I read a Huffington Post piece today, and I didn't mean to. It just sort of appeared by accident, in which Jeff Sessions was attacked for his name because he was named apparently after a Confederate figure. Do you think Jeff Sessions chose his name? I think that's a fair. I mean, like, there are things you can criticize about Jeff Sessions, but it's so unfair that kind of just self-discrediting.
I'm old enough to remember that it was beyond the pale to even mention Barack Obama's middle name. Exactly. So the idea that you would that you'd go after Sessions for his name is something else entirely. I do want to respond to your previous guest who was talking about he didn't know what Jeff Sessions' views on the Klan were. I would look to how he prosecuted the head of the Klan for abducting and murdering a black teenage boy who he picked at random. He fought hard for the death penalty. He prosecuted several cases to desegregate Alabama schools. So if you're wondering about desegregation, there's something you could look at. He was elected the state attorney general in Alabama, where he made sure that that death penalty was carried out against that man who killed the black teenage boy. And he also, because of his actions, there was able to be a $7 million civil settlement that ended up bankrupting the Klan in Alabama. So if you're really wondering about his views on the Klan, that might be something.
I wasn't, because I know him, and Susan, Jeff Sessions does have some views that are not fully mainstream on trade, for example. They're out of the mainstream in Washington, that's for sure. He's very suspicious of our trade deals. Definitely.
And that's not out of the mainstream anymore.
Well, it's not, but in Washington it is. So I wonder, why not attack him on that? You know what I mean? If you're going to go after him as a Democrat, why not go after what he's actually said?
Well, it's true. I think what liberals fear most about Sessions is his views on immigration, which are well known and well documented. He is a staunch opponent and border security advocate in the House, in the Senate. And I think that's really behind a lot of what their worries are about, his political views. But they can't really attack him on that. He's a member of the Senate. He's going to glide to confirmation, I believe. And so they're looking for things. They're picking at things in his past.
You think he's going to glide? Because you're hearing all these sort of ominous rumblings. He'll never make it through.
Well, I'll tell you how that works right now. Well, no, because first of all, he can get through. He only needs 51 votes. Right. And Senator Susan Collins of Maine, perhaps the most moderate Republican in the Senate, to announce that she is supporting him at this point. So I don't see anything barring him from getting through the finish line. But as you were saying, what is it that they really oppose about him? There's not a lot that that he's done in the past 2 decades in the Senate, as you pointed out. So they're digging into 30 years ago and the whole nomination process and how he lost his chance to serve on the court based on what someone accused him of saying, these racial remarks. The person who made some of those remarks was discredited with his own issues, his own credibility issues. That goes back 30 years ago.
The whole thing is so dumb. I just can't even.
What it is they're just looking for they're lining up these three nominees as like mugshots. Like, look at these nominees. They're not diverse. There's no women. Well, you know, Trump is picking people based on merit and loyalty, and he's not going for the big diverse thing, although he is looking at other diverse candidates.
Right, he's not in identity politics, man. That's for sure. So Mitt Romney, Molly, apparently, according to Brian Yenes, who's in Bedminster, is showing up at Trump National Golf Course, apparently as a supplicant. Is there a possibility that Mitt Romney would find a place in this administration?
I think it's a great idea that they're meeting, and I think both Mitt Romney and Donald Trump have a lot to gain through this meeting. Mitt Romney cares a lot about the country, and I think he shows that by, he went out hard against Donald Trump, and he's willing to sort of take his lumps there to meet with him. And Donald Trump, is a lot of people say that he's a very magnanimous, generous person. So by having this meeting and considering him for a post, I think it works out well for him. Also, Mitt Romney is very well qualified, and it would kind of calm the fears of a lot of people if he were to have a role in this administration.
Well, you have to suck up a lot to take it. And finally, General Flynn, Michael Flynn, former head, Intel head, now National Security Advisor.
Another person. Don't get on Twitter, because they're finding stories about things that happened underneath him that he had nothing to do with, and that he condemned to try to drag him down again. It's the same kind of argument that they're looking for things that he said and done to make him look like.
But is there any debate about policies or ideas, or is it all
he said some things on Twitter about Muslims that people are worried about. But if you look at what he's saying, he's talking about radical Islamist fundamentalism, and that may be dangerous. I mean, there are a lot of people who think that.
Right. No, but it's not. It's not dangerous. Here in Washington, we're going to say that's not dangerous. You have nothing to fear. You're a bad person if you're afraid. Thanks for joining us, both of you. Now it is time for Twitter Storm. Tonight's social media forecast shows a low-pressure system brewing over Kanye West. The media-savvy rapper shocked concert-goers on Thursday with this post-election revelation during a show in San Jose, California. Watch this.
I didn't vote, right? But I didn't tell you, if I would have voted, I would have voted on Trump.
Well, Twitter, needless to say, went bonkers, because that's what Twitter does. A man called Rafael Ortiz tweeted this: Kanye is a perfect illustration of how lust for wealth and fame can corrupt your basic values. 2004 Kanye wouldn't recognize 2016 Kanye. And to be honest, I wouldn't recognize either one. A man called G wrote this: I'm actually devastated at the fact that Kanye supports Trump like ... what ... end quote. And Celeste tweeted this: I can't believe Kanye said he would have voted for Trump. I am done. Kanye has lost a fan in coming out for Trump, assuming he really did come out for Trump, assuming you care about anything Kanye says. And that's tonight's Twitter Storm. Well, the mayors of some so-called sanctuary cities are getting ready to defy the federal government on immigration law. Bill Richardson, who was a border state governor, joins us next on that. Also, judging from the coverage today, you think Donald Trump had just made Idi Amin the Secretary of Cannibalism. It is that over the top. We'll take a look at some of the hyperventilating headlines, and there are a lot of them coming up. Well, mayors of sanctuary cities across the country are prepping for a battle with the Trump administration. Many have vowed to openly defy the federal government on immigration laws, refusing even to report criminal aliens who have been released from jail. Joining us now is the former governor of the border state of New Mexico, Bill Richardson. Great to see you, Governor. So
nice to be with you, Tucker.
There are millions of people here illegally, and I guess the question is, do the mayors of these cities have any idea who they are? That's a significant question from the perspective of national security. Do they know who these people are? Do they care?
They do know who they are. They're the construction workers, they're the fruit pickers, they're the restaurant workers, they're people that are janitors, they're doing essential work, and a majority, according to studies, have not participated in crime. Look, we're talking about 200 American cities in 32 states. And you know, Tucker, who wants to make sure this law, sanctuary cities, remain, is police officers. Police officers don't want to do the work of the federal government, going and asking who's illegal or not.
Police officers don't get to make laws.
Don't want this to change.
They carry out the laws.
Police,
it's a little weird
law
that
enforcement community.
Law enforcement, not law making.
Tucker, the law enforcement community has stopped efforts in the Congress.
Bit of an overstatement. I mean, police chiefs serve at the pleasure of mayors typically, and they kind of do what they're told. But here's the point. The 9/11 Commission recommended against things like this, as you well know, in 2004. 6 of the 9/11 hijackers had violated immigration laws. It's not a small thing to say, you know what, we don't know who these people are really. We know what they do, as you pointed out. We don't know who they are. They don't have Social Security numbers. And they're roaming free, and, like, we don't care because we know they're going to vote for us when they get legalized by a Democrat? I mean, isn't that kind of reckless?
No, first of all, it's going to take a long time before they can vote, with a path to legalization taking almost 11 years and Donald Trump wanting to deport everybody. So that's point number one. Point number two, listen to what I'm saying. The law enforcement community, police officers, don't want this to interfere in their policing of local communities because it's going to break up families.
I'm not going to go along with that stipulation because I don't think it's true. I don't think it's true. We don't know that. And by the way, who cares what they think? Because that's distinct from what elected officials are charged with doing. The local police officer, local police
You've been
elected
in all
to a
of
lot
these
of
cities
offices,
don't
Governor.
want this to happen.
We don't know that. First of all, I don't buy that. The Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police union, endorsed Trump. So that may tell you something right there. But my point is, look, you've been elected to Congress, you've been elected governor. Is it really okay for an elected official to say, as many did during the 50s and 60s, we're just going to ignore what the feds want? We're defying federal law. Is that a good precedent to set? Because if they can do it on this, why can't they do it on other laws?
If we follow your logic, why is it that so many object, including conservatives, with President Obama wanting to stop deportations? It's a federal responsibility.
The question. Is it a good precedent to set? If I'm mayor, can I just say, you know what, we're not going to enforce that law? Maybe a law against child abuse or drug use or tax evasion. We're just not going to enforce it. There's nothing you can do. Should we do that? Really?
As long as the local law community, the local law enforcement community, the local city council agrees with the mayor, this is a states' rights, a city rights issue. The police should
so you're a states' rights guy now.
A mayor.
I knew this was going to wind up in a crazy place. Did you just invoke states' rights?
Now you've changed your position. You want the federal government. You want federal laws to run everything. We want the states. We want local control.
Is that what you're saying?
You've changed your argument with the election of Trump. Come on.
Amazing. All right. Now, Governor, while we got you here, quickly, last time we talked about a story that actually you know a lot about. It's a story that a lot of people are ignoring, including the administration. But this kid, 21 years old, Otto Warmbier, he's a UVA student. He's from Ohio. He's being held hostage in North Korea right now, and it doesn't seem like a lot is being done to get him home. So we reached out to the State Department for an update, and here's what they said, and tell us what you think of this. This is the quote from State. Quote, "We understand that a DPRK, North Korean court, convicted U.S. citizen Otto Warmbier. Mr. Warmbier reportedly was charged with hostile acts against the country, sentenced to 15 years hard labor. Now he has gone through the criminal process. We urge that country to pardon him, grant him amnesty, or immediate release on humanitarian grounds." Is that an effective way to negotiate with North Korea over an American hostage, do you think?
Well, look, the problem, Tucker, is that the North Koreans don't want to talk to us. They've isolated themselves from the entire international community. I've been working with the North Koreans to try to get Otto out. I mean, we haven't had much success, but, you know, we're trying to find ways, like, for instance, the remains of American soldiers from the Korean War, see if we can get some of those remains back, find some humanitarian way that allows Otto Warmbier, who is a kid, you know, he just made a mistake, to come home. So we're working that, and we're working with the White House to make that happen. I mean, they have to be very careful. Ours is a private effort, a humanitarian effort. You know, I try to do this with American prisoners, American servicemen around the world. We don't know what's going to happen with Otto, but we've had some success in the past, but it's not a lost deal. I think the State Department has to be very careful. You know,
why wouldn't they just say this China, though? I mean, could China, I mean, you've done this before, so I mean, this is a sincere question, but couldn't the U.S. government say to China, hey, pressure your client states, just let the guy out, like now?
Well, we've tried to do that, but I don't think China wants to help us. Why would they want to help us? They want to create little trouble for us in the peninsula.
Yeah,
so,
good point.
Unfortunately, China does have leverage with North Korea, but they don't want to use it. I mean, we need them to stop their nuclear weapons. But, you know, we're making a little progress, a little slow progress, and we hope to get them out.
Well, I thank you for what you're doing. Governor, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
All right.
We're going to keep reporting on this story until that kid is brought safely home, 21 years old. Whoa. Well, the press hates Donald Trump even more than they ever have. Can they fairly cover him once he becomes president? Will they even try? Chris Plant joins us next. So the campaign is over. Hillary lost. The press can take a break from carrying water for the Democratic Party for a minute, right? Well, you'd think so. But take a look at some of these headlines from today. As Trump rises, so do Confederate battle flags. That's the New York Times, of course. They're up everywhere. This from the Washington Post. Fear of Muslims is rational, what Trump's new national security advisor has said online, presumably secretly. Other headlines targeted Trump's family, like this one from the Times. Ivanka Trump's presence at a meeting with Japan's leader raises questions. Not clear what questions, just questions. And one more from the Washington Post. Why Trump's family being in his administration tests laws, ethics. So are journalists capable of covering Trump fairly? Do they even want to? Radio talk show host, our friend Chris Plant, is here with the answer. Can they?
No.
So what's going to happen?
No, absolutely not. Look, this election to the news media was the equivalent of 9/11 to the intelligence community. This is their epic failure. This is it. This is a catastrophe. It was a slam dunk. It was done. They had it. It was in the bag. Hillary was going to win.
Yeah.
And she lost. It's like the towers coming down. They have literally. This is the morning. The Post-it notes in New York. The comfort dogs on campus. The Play-Doh. This is their 9/11. It really is, and it is a catastrophe for them. And they feel that they need to make up for lost time. So now they're going to invade Iraq. This is going to be the news media onslaught. The jihad is just beginning, and they're going to ratchet up. You were showing some of these headlines. General Flynn, in one piece of videotape, failed to use the modifier radical before the word Islam when he was talking about Islamic terrorism.
Right.
And therefore, he is an Islamophobe and a terrible person, and we must fear him, and he's a warmonger, and we know that Donald Trump is anything but never mind that. Every person that comes up in the course of conversation during that, we're looking. Well, look, every story they do, picking the cabinet and his picks. He's doing it much faster than Barack Obama did, than Ronald Reagan did, than Bill Clinton did. But still, the onslaught, the attacks every day, it's taking too long. He's not transparent enough. He went out to dinner with his wife at the 21 Club. Bill Clinton ditched the press pool all the time to go jogging, to go to McDonald's, to go to visit girlfriends. Barack Obama ditched everybody talks about when he ditched him in Hawaii. He ditched him here to go to his girls' soccer game. He ditched him when he was at Andrews Air Force Base playing golf. And the news media didn't become apoplectic.
So, but in all of these stories, I'm just mentally ticking through them, and I'm going, let's see, who cares, dumb,
right,
stupid, banal, trite, conventional. I mean, there's really almost no coverage of anything real. I guess that's what I'm struck by. It's just racist, bad person, racist.
There's traffic on Fifth Avenue in New York because
what is
Trump is there.
About? What's he going to do? What does he believe? How are the policies going to change? Those are issues, right?
Answer is racist. That's the answer.
What's the
Islamophobic, xenophobic. It's the Democrat Party's playbook. It's all they have. They don't really have an affirmative message to put out there, and they had Hillary Clinton as their candidate. So they destroy their opponents. I mean, you know perfectly well that this is the Clinton playbook. It has been for decades. But you don't. I mean, you come out, you smile, you're nice. It's a TV show, and you destroy the people on the other side. And that's what. And their coalition is also a race-based coalition. So it's the Democrat Party's coalition, the party of the Confederacy and Jefferson Davis and the Klan and Jim Crow and standing in schoolhouse doors. Has a race-based coalition, and they need the African-American vote, they need the Latino vote, the fastest growing, yada, yada, and that's all they talk about is race. And they make promises to different groups based on their race and their ethnicity and your gender, because that's their coalition, and that's how they win elections.
But do you notice a direct correlation between the messaging of the Democratic Party and the news selection of the press?
Oh, of course.
I mean, it's almost like there's a conference call or something. So
it's so a part of the discussion that they don't have to have a conference call. And people ask me that all the time. People probably ask you that too. Whether they coordinate, whether they have a literal conference call, whether emails go out. They don't have to. They're all on the same page when they get out of bed.
It's a lot of the same people. I mean, I know a bunch of people in the Washington press corps who used to work for Democrats on Capitol Hill.
Sure, most of them.
I mean, but literally work for Democrats. I was a press secretary on the Hill. Really? For whom? I mean, 100% a Democrat. And then you go into the press and you're supposed to be totally objective. It does seem a weird career path. No?
The show is not long enough to list all of the Washington and New York people that work for Democrats.
Will you come back and we will do that show?
I will, absolutely. You know, I mean, Chuck Todd and Chris Matthews and even Brian Williams worked. I mean, the list is so long.
Okay, so I'm gonna. My producers, I hope, are watching the show right now. If you could just make that note, let's have Chris Plant back, and we're going to do that show. Thank you.
All right, it's a deal.
Great to see you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks. And here's something new, the latest milestone in the civil rights struggle, apparently the right to be rude and unpleasant. A former employee claims he was fired from the grocery store chain Trader Joe's for failing to smile. According to the New York Times, 27-year-old Thomas Nagel was axed from his longtime gig at Trader Joe's, a store on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. This happened in September, and he filed an unfair labor practices charge this month. Nagel also provided the Times with recordings of several performance reviews in which his manager reprimanded him for having, quote, insufficiently genuine smiles and demeanor. In response to the allegations, Trader Joe's says it does not fire employees for trivial reasons, as if manners are trivial. Ah! All right, President-elect has been heavily criticized for promising a border wall. Walls are racist, right? But wait, it turns out they're a lot more common around the world than you would think. That's next. Plus, tonight you're going to get TMZ-level access to Donald Trump's Fifth Avenue gilded penthouse. Harvey Levin is here to give us a preview. Coming up. So what's next? It's a question we plan to answer regularly on a bunch of topics, but tonight it means what's next for President-elect Donald Trump's plan for a wall along our southern border. Trump took a ton of criticism for that plan, and not just from Americans, but from people in other countries busy morally posturing against the United States. But did you know that there are border walls and fences all throughout Western Europe? I didn't know that. That's why we're joined tonight by Fox News correspondent William Lajeunesse, who's got the whole story. William, great to see you.
Well, Tucker, you know who else got criticized was George W. Bush when he called out the National Guard to build a fence on the southern border. Democrats said it wasn't going to work. World leaders criticized him as insensitive and cruel. Well, those same countries are suddenly building their own walls. Austria, Greece, Hungary, Norway, Croatia, India, Kenya, to control their borders.
At the end of World War II, there were less than 5 border walls anywhere in the world. As late as 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, there were about 15 border walls. Today, there are almost 70.
Now, as for critics who say for every 12-foot wall, there's a 13-foot ladder, implying that walls are useless, well, by themselves, that's true, but they're not. They're backed by cameras and sensors, manpowers and roads, and enforcement isn't easy, but it is easier, Tucker, with a wall than without one. By the way, apprehensions since the George Bush wall down from 1.2 million to 400,000. Tucker?
Yeah, it worked well in Israel and the West Bank. Suicide bombings basically stopped. So what are Trump's plans for border security?
Well, right now we have about 350 miles of fence. Trump, as you know, is debating about whether or not to put in a brick and mortar wall or a double-layered steel fence like the one in Yuma with a road in between. The 2008 Secure Fence Act called for an additional 570 miles of double fencing. Here's why.
By having a fence in conjunction with cameras and a road, usually we're able to see people coming as they approach the fence. We're able to see them as they're starting to come over the fence, and then we're able to move resources into position so that when they do come over the fence, we can quickly go in and make that apprehension.
Now, the problem with bricks and mortar wall is you can't see through it. Water often needs to pass under it. And as soon as you're done, the cartels bring out the jackhammers. They're on the back side. They carve into it, and it falls down. The fact is, Tucker, topography usually dictates design. Some areas need fence, others do not, or is not economical or practical. So that's the situation now. What the Trump administration will do, we'll have to see.
Interesting. So what's the status of all the Central Americans on the border now?
It is really bad. I talked to a senior border agent today. The problem is there are so many. They're coming over about 40,000 a month right now, and our bed space is entirely full. They don't know what to do. They're erecting tents right now in Texas, 4 to a tent, because they want to contain any kind of outbreak. Basically, the problem is under the Bush administration, prior to President Obama, a border officer would interview the person. If they didn't have a credible fear, they don't believe they were politically persecuted, just general violence, they would turn those people in for return. And all the unaccompanied minors would be returned. That is not the case under President Obama, so they're filling up. We have a backlog of 4 years and 560,000 cases in the courts. These people, as you know, 85% of them don't show up. But right now, the border agents are extremely frustrated because the Central Americans fear that Trump is going to put in a wall, so they're all coming right now. Right. That's why we have now reassigned 150 agents to the southwest border to deal with the surge. Back to you.
This is how radical demographic change happens, for sure. William, thanks. That was so interesting. I appreciate it. Well, we've all seen snapshots of Donald Trump's gilded Fifth Avenue apartment. Harvey Levin of TMZ actually wandered around it with a camera. Of course he did. He joins us next. So the show gets a little intense. We like to cool it down as we come toward the end. A segment we're calling The Friend Zone, where we invite one of our friends hosting another show here on Fox onto the program. Tonight, Sean Hannity is off. There's a special in his place, a host at 10 p.m. who's not Sean. He's getting a rare look inside Donald Trump's life. He is Harvey Levin of TMZ. He's going to bring you a show called Objectified Donald Trump right here on Fox. And Harvey joins us now from the TMZ newsroom in Los Angeles. Harvey Levin, thanks a lot for coming on. So what did you think of Trump? You went inside his house. You spent time with him. What's your takeaway?
Well, Tucker, I got to tell you, this is a very different, in some ways fundamentally different person from the one that most people have seen over the last 16 months. Donald Trump, as far as most people have seen, is a very tenacious, some say arrogant guy who stands behind a podium and speaks brashly. This is different. This is Donald Trump in his element, walking me through his house, showing me items that he kept throughout his life from childhood on, and telling me about what was going on when he got them. And this is the way we're kind of telling his life story. And he is humble. I got to say, he is introspective, at times self-critical, fearful in terms of the way he's describing various things in his life, very human. And it is a different look at this guy. And a lot of people say this is the guy they knew. And my feeling about it is that you've got two Donald Trumps now, and it's probably an amalgam between the two that is the real Donald Trump at this point. But I don't think a lot of people were exposed to what we saw that we're going to show you tonight.
So what is your friends in L.A.? I mean, you live in L.A., and you're in celebrity world, and everybody hates Trump. What did they say? What did people you know say when you said, by the way, I'm flying to New York to go to Trump's house with a camera? What did people say to you?
Well, I did this, Tucker, in mid-September, and a lot of these people were indignant. And they said, why would you give him a voice?
Yeah, exactly.
There was a lot of meanness about it. And we didn't air it because I will tell you, I asked both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. She said no, he said yes. And it didn't feel fair during the election because my job was not to try and sway people to vote for him. And when we looked at it, it just didn't feel fair. Now that he's won, it really shows a side that I think people should see and then judge for yourself. I mean, it may change some minds, not change others. Judge for yourself, but I think it's an authentic look. And I'll give you an example. His brother died of alcoholism when he was 42, and Donald Trump has never had a drink in his life. And I wanted to know if he felt scared that he might have that gene, that maybe he's an alcoholic who would turn into that if he started drinking. And here's the way that went. Freddie is standing in the middle there.
Right.
He died at 42, really from alcoholism.
I've never had a drink because of my brother.
Does it worry you that you might have that gene, something inside of you that if you took a drink, you wouldn't stop? You might turn into what happened to Fred, and does it scare you? So, Tucker, I am telling you, he was authentic in answering that, and he didn't stonewall it. There is fear that Donald Trump has. He really showed a human side about that, about raising his kids, about Melania, about not really wanting to go to business school when he decided what college to go to, and what he really wanted to do, what his passion was. We talk about, in fact, Tucker, you've seen pictures and maybe you've been there to his house, and it's just gold-plated everywhere. I wanted to know what the White House is going to look like. And he talked about that. He had strong feelings about that. There's a lot in this that will kind of help complete a picture of Donald Trump, the man.
So how did you, I mean, if TMZ called me and said, can we come to your house? No. I mean, it's, you know what I mean?
Thanks a lot.
How hard was it to set no, I mean that with love, but I mean, TMZ exposes things, right? And so people would be very wary of that. How did you set this up?
I mean, look, we have interactions with people all the time. I've known Donald Trump for more than a dozen years because I've known him as the host of The Apprentice. And,
right,
you know, we've had interactions from time to time with stories. And I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, it sounds great. And he was very gracious and wanted to do it. And, you know, I think when you see it, this was not a gotcha interview. That was not the point of this. This was not a gotcha here, gotcha there, nor was it, you know, a puff piece designed to make him look like this fantastic guy with no problems. My job was to take objects throughout his life and see if he could connect to those objects and create a real story about the ups and downs of his life. And I think we did it. I'm going to
watch it. You've totally sold me on that. Harvey Levin, thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker.
Well, coming up next, last night we asked you what stories we ought to be covering but aren't, and you responded in a big way. You choose the news. That's coming up. And now it's time for You Choose the News. Last night we asked you to tell us what stories we should be covering but aren't. Tonight's winning submission comes from Melinda Traynor, who wants to know more about the San Francisco Teachers Union offering up an anti-Trump lesson plan, which they did. Here's the story. I had not heard of it. It's pretty interesting. A social studies teacher at Mission High School in San Francisco wrote the lesson plan just hours after Trump won last Tuesday. The plan calls Trump a, quote, racist and sexist man, and claims, listen to this, he won the election, quote, by pandering to a huge racist and sexist base, which is how the left considers the middle of the country. The Teachers Union, United Educators of San Francisco, then posted this political propaganda on its website and distributed it to its 6,000 plus members in an email newsletter. The school district says the plan is optional and not part of the official curriculum. The Teachers Union is standing by all of it. Melinda, we're working to get you more on the story. We've reached out to the school district and the Teachers Union to see if they'll come on this show to tell us more about this. So stay tuned. We are on it. Well, Monday, we're going to have a new feature segment called News Abuse. You've seen an egregious example of media bias or dumbness. Of course you have. A ludicrous headline or television segment. Send your evidence to us on Twitter. It's at Tucker Carlson. Or you can email tuckercarlsontonight@foxnews.com. Well, that's it. Our first week of this show is done. Tune in every weeknight as we do battle with the dark forces of dishonesty and pomposity. The O'Reilly Factor is up next. Bill's got the latest on Trump's pick of Senator Jeff Sessions to be U.S. Attorney General. We'll leave you with something that hasn't happened on this show yet. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.